Welcome back to India Tonight. We're discussing turmoil or paralysis in Pakistan. Choose the adjective. It all seems to fit today. Mariana Babar, one institution that is watching anxiously is, of course, the Pakistani army. Do you think General Kayani, as some people are speculating, could seize this moment to bring the army back to power? Or do you believe that he is not really interested in taking over?
He doesn't really have much choice, Karan, because he has seen in the past, recently, not in the recent past, Parvez Musharraf trying to deliver the moon to the Pakistanis, and what happened. And together with that, there's this big mess of the war against terror, which he and his soldiers are fighting in Fatah and on our northern areas with linking our borders with Afghanistan. They're trying to clean up that mess. And he is not only a man of few words, but I don't see him full of action like the previous commando that was thrown on us. No, I don't think he is going to move in that sense. But having said that, if the government doesn't pull back the police and what have you, and you see blood on the street, and you see things getting absolutely out of hand, then of course the army will move in. But move in to improve the situation for security purposes or taking over, that's debatable. This is Pakistan and anything can happen.
Amit Barua, as you heard Mariana Babar say, this is Pakistan and anything can happen, but things aren't likely to happen, at least a military coup, without some sort of nod and wink from Washington. Now, as of now, the Obama administration appears to be fully behind President Zardari. To what extent will that influence General Kayani, if at all he's thinking of intervening?
Well, I think that, frankly, Washington is not going to be terribly upset if the army takes over, because their interest lies in basically dealing with extremist forces. And from whatever we've seen of the civilian government so far, it hasn't been a great show. So I think Washington, as far as it's concerned, is not going to be terribly upset. There have been some remarks by former CIA officials saying that this wouldn't be such a bad thing. So my sense is that Washington, even in 1999, when Parvez Musharraf took over, he didn't use the title of Chief Martial Law Administrator. He called himself Chief Executive. And finally, after a few months of distance, Washington did accept his government.
Picking up, Raza Lashkar, on what you've just heard Amit Barua say, how true were the reports last week that suggested that on return from Washington, Kayani delivered Zardari an ultimatum to perform, and the suggestion being that somehow this was in fact being conveyed on Washington's behalf?
Well, this was a media report that did the rounds, but there was nothing on the ground to suggest that such a harsh message had been sent out. I'm sure General Kayani, I personally find General Kayani as a man who has, acquitted himself pretty well in the last 1 year or so. And he has sent out a clear message that he wants to get his force back into fighting form. He's focused on the soldiers. He's focused on, anti-militancy operations. But I'm sure he is a man who is also concerned about what is happening in the country. And that is the reason why we had yesterday General Kayani calling on Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani for a meeting while President Zardari was out of the country. And I'm sure the situation that is brewing must have been discussed by the two leaders.
Mubashir Zaidi, beyond General Kayani, what is the mood of the critical corps commanders? Now, I know that the important ones are clearly people who have been appointed by Kayani and would therefore be seen as Kayani's men. But do they share his general thinking that the Pakistan army, if possible, should not intervene?
Well, I think the general consensus, as we know, is that the situation is so messy that any intervention by a military will not serve any purpose. Kayani has taken last 1 year to actually take military away from the battering it got from the people of Pakistan when its political role was questioned by people on the streets. Its role in influencing the judiciary also came up for discussion. So he took this 1 year to take a military away from the eyes of the criticism, from the storm that was on military for the past 6-7 years. So I think it's very, very hard for the military to now intervene and get into the mess. But certainly they will be very, very worried. They must be telling the government to resolve this crisis either way, whatever they want. But their interest in restoration of deposed Chief Justice Iftikhar Chaudhary matches with that of Zardari. Board doesn't want him to be restored.
Mariana Babar, we have very little time, perhaps not even a minute. As this drama unfolds, will the Pakistan government, which is clearly now an embattled administration, have either the inclination or the time to pursue the Mumbai terror case, or do you think that will be inevitably squeezed out, dropped, maybe even pushed to the back burner?
You see, Karan, it cannot be dropped at all, because that links not only terrorism between India and Pakistan, but the whole region. It will always be there. Okay, it won't be on the front pages or in your programs, but it will be there. It has to be there. And finally, when the push comes, as Amit says from Washington, it will be to pay attention to the war on terror.
Amit, how does South Bloc view what's happening in Pakistan? How concerned would they be?
Well, I haven't spoken to anyone recently, but I think there is concern. There's a lot of concern about what's happening in Pakistan, because it's not just the political crisis. That's, in my view, it's a sideshow to the larger growth of extremism. And we've seen yesterday there's been an attack on an ANP minister. So clearly this situation is getting out of control. And if the army is looking to deal with Pakistan, to stabilize Pakistan, it's not just the political issue. This is a larger issue. And that is something which is worrying everyone here.
Razaul, very, very quickly, what's the understanding you get from the High Commission in Islamabad?
Well, people are very, very concerned about the situation. They are trying to, find out what is happening. They are constantly trying to keep in touch with political leaders, with leaders from all political parties, to keep their finger on the pulse. So obviously there is a lot of concern, because they are worried about how this situation will develop.
I'm afraid we've run right out of time at that particular point. My thanks to Razaul Lashkar and Mubashir Zaidi for joining us from that studio in Islamabad. My thanks to Mariana Babar for joining us from the adjoining city of Rawalpindi. And my thanks to Amit Barua for coming to our studio here in Delhi. As all eyes are on Pakistan, we end this particular show, but clearly this is an issue and a subject that's going to continue for days and days ahead. You have been. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.